Talk about this dark period. What's going to happen to the fighters? I mean, they're missing at least 6 months of action.
Sure. Obviously, foremost concern is the champions. It's Eddie Alvarez, Hector Lombard, Lyman Good, Joe Soto. We're working right now on fight opportunities that will not be title defenses with those guys fighting in Japan, fighting in Australia, and also fighting in the U.S. And then what they will do is there is no chance that those guys are going to wait for the conclusion of the second season to have their next fight. That's far too long of an off period. But we're going to get them busy. You might see a fighter like Joe, or conceivably even a fighter like Eddie, fighting at the beginning of the show in a special feature bout, in a bout that would not be a title defense or potentially not in his weight class. So, but those guys will fight before we determine that number one challenger who's going to challenge them for their world title.
Mm-hmm. And are these on like just a case by case basis, or are like Bellator contracts exclusive?
No, one of the things that I said a lot last season when people would ask me that question is kind of I put on the fan hat and I take off the CEO hat, and that's that I'm open to the guys fighting anywhere as long as the fights are fights that as a fan I'm looking at and saying that'd be a great fight, I would love to see that. Eddie wants to stay busy, Hector wants to stay busy, so does Joe and Lyman. So it really doesn't, we're not in a position where I'm going to stand up and say it's going to be a Bellator fight and it's going to be a Bellator promotion. If the right fight's there, and it's a fight that I look at and that our team of development specialists look at, Matt Stanzel looks at, and we say, hey, that makes sense, that would be an exciting fight to see, we're going to make it happen. And it can be under someone else's banner, it can be under our banner working with theirs, it can be any number of things. But there's no hard and fast rule. In other words, we're not drawing a line in the sand and saying if it's not a Bellator show, it's not going to happen. That's not the case. We talk to a lot of people, and we're trying to open up lines of communication and kind of trade-offs, if you will, with people, and saying, hey, maybe you could get so-and-so to fight with us because we'd love to see him fight in the tournament, and we'd love Eddie or Hector or whoever it is to fight with you.
We've seen the other promotions really protective of their champions, so it's not a concern for you, say, when a champion goes out and loses to someone else.
I'll tell you, it's not one of the beautiful things about mixed martial arts that makes it so much, I mean, there's 1,001 things that make it different than boxing, but one of the great things about MMA is the realization that a guy can lose, and it's not the end of the world. He doesn't go back to the back of the line. I mean, people forget Eddie Alvarez went over and fought Aoki in Japan literally 3 months before our tournament started. Eddie was ranked in the top 10. Aoki was, by many people's accounts, he may be the best 55-pounder in the world. Maybe he's number 2. I think he's number 2 right now. Eddie's 3 and BJ's 1. So it doesn't... when you fight the best of the best, when you put yourself up against the best fighters in the world, you're going to lose. Just like the Lakers are going to lose in the NBA, and the Giants or the Steelers are going to lose in the NFL. It happens, and it doesn't mean that a fighter still isn't one of the best in the world. It just means that he had the guts to go out and challenge himself against somebody. When BJ steps up, he loses, but he goes back down to his weight and he wins and dominates. It's just that's the essence of sport, as far as I'm concerned and our company's concerned. So if a guy loses, you don't, from a marketing perspective in MMA, you don't need to keep that pristine record with no losses on it in order to be considered viable. I mean, look at Randy Couture's record. Look at some of the other guys' records that have established themselves in this sport as amongst the best of the best. They fight, they win. Last week he lost. It still doesn't mean that he's not one of the biggest draws and one of the best fighters in the heavyweight division. So, it's not something that we kind of as a corporate foundation are concerned with. The guys are going to win, the guys are going to lose.